Boye. One of my most memorable professional moments was what I call a ruse, Miss Kinsey's ruse, wherein I was basically the dean of an elementary school. And one day I was coming down the hall, and Miss Kinsey was coming the opposite direction with her kindergarten class. And all of a sudden, Miss Kinsey, you know, goes into this, mild like sense of urgency where she's like, class, here comes Mr. Origunwa. Here comes Mr. Origunwa. Quick, show him what a great class you are. And instantly, all the students got really, upright, and their eyes faced forward and their shoulders back and their arms to the side. And it was like an energy of attention. And so naturally, I had to pay attention. And so I did my duty and I came over and I inspected them, I looked at them one by one and I complimented them on their composure and on their discipline. And, I said how great a class they were. And she went on, good job, class. I knew you could do it. Thank you so much. And she kind of gave me a nod and a wink, and I kept going down the hall. But it didn't take me long to realize, wow, that was an amazing little play, impromptu. Our school didn't have any kind of, it was a public school. We didn't have any kind of inspections or anything like that. I wasn't like, Joe Clark and Lean on Me where I'm going down the hall and I'm, barking orders and stuff like that. It's nothing like that at all. But Miss Kinsey just created a ruse, right? And it was a play, and she pulled me into it and was able to reinforce certain things and values within her students in like 3 minutes, And to me, it was a magnificent display of, kind of mother wit, right? Of, she positioned herself as sort of the mother of the class, and by doing so, positioned me as the father of the class, and reinforced the exact kind of energy that the students would respond to and would give them a great sense of pride and accomplishment for this very small gesture. Okay? It was magical. Now, this is the School of Orisha Studies, and I'm your instructor, Obafemi Origunwa. And today's lesson is on masculine and feminine energy within OrisaLifestyle. Now, this is a really powerful and important lesson. And in order for me to really do it justice, I got to build out a little bit of a concept and a little bit of framework in order for us to be on the same page in understanding this very important and oftentimes misunderstood and misrepresented dynamic between masculine and feminine energies. And it's difficult because we tend to mix up, the idea of masculine, man, and male, or feminine, female, and woman. Okay, we use the terms interchangeably, and they're not always interchangeable. Okay, so now to help you really understand what I'm saying by that, let me back up a little bit, or let me pan out a little bit to talk about systems. Okay, because when we're talking about OrisaLifestyle, we're talking about a variety of systems, a complex of interlocking systems. Okay, So let's look at your bodily systems. You as an organism, you're made up of multiple systems. You have a circulatory system. You have a glandular system. You have a respiratory system, right? And what characterizes a system is that it's got multiple parts, right? A system means that there are multiple parts and they all interact with one another. There's an interplay between all of these different systems. If one part of the system is down, it's going to have a negative impact on other parts of the system. Sometimes if you take one part out of a system, the system will shut down, or that part will actually have no purpose, no function. So let's look at, for example, your respiratory system. The respiratory system has got things like the nose, the mouth, the lungs. Okay, all of those are parts of the respiratory system. If you don't have a mouth, then it's going to make certain things hard on your respiratory system. You're going to just have to, your nose and your lungs. You take the nose out, right? It has another impact on your respiratory system. You take the lungs out, right? Well, you've collapsed the respiratory system, right? So the nose and the mouth will have an impact on the respiratory system, but the lungs, that's like the driving force. That's the main element in the respiratory system. All right. Now, if you take the nose off the respiratory system, it'll continue to work, but what are you going to do with the nose? Can you just take the nose off and put it anywhere you want? You're going to take the nose off and put it on the ear? It won't work. You're going to take the nose off of your respiratory system and you're going to put it onto a cat? It won't work. Your nose and put it on a whale? It won't work, right? Your nose, a human nose, works with a human respiratory system, right? It is essential to that particular system. It's built in a certain way because it has a particular function in the respiratory system, right? Now, when we look at things like OrisaLifestyle, OrisaLifestyle has multiple kinds of systems. All of those systems come out of Yoruba civilization, right? And Yoruba civilization has multiple systems. There's a legal system. There's a military system. There's a family system. There's a political system. There's a religious system. Okay? Lots of different systems. Now, within the religious system of OrisaLifestyle, you've got let's say you've got the religious system that consists of the text, the oral system, the way information is taught and shared through the oral tradition. You've got an herbal system. You've got a musical drumming system. You've got a textiles and other kind of physical carvings and weaving and stuff like that. It's another system. These are all layers of systems that are within the religious system. And obviously they bleed out into other aspects of the broader Yoruba civilization. But you can see that they're different systems. Each one is distinct, but it's part of a whole system. Each system has multiple parts. So let me now zero in on one aspect of the system from a Western perspective so we can just narrow our conversation down. I'm trying to just build out the framework for you can understand that we're talking about systems, and systems have multiple parts, right? And every cluster of activity has its own little set of systems, right? Now, within the religious system of OrisaLifestyle, you have, let's say, the instructive textual part of the system that says these are verses of Ifa, these are proverbs, these are oriki, these are verses of the Erindinlogun, and so on, right? These are instructions, these are recipes. That's one part, and they're talking about a variety of different things. Within the sacred text of Ifa, for example, you could be talking about historical events, the establishment of a kingdom, historical figures, right? You could be talking about within the sacred text, you could be talking about how things are done, how different medicines are prepared, right? You could be talking about metaphysical things, right? And this is the part where the masculine and feminine conversation comes to a point. Excuse me. Within Orisha lifestyle, you can have a metaphysical conversation that is embedded into the sacred text. So, for example, you have a verse of Ifa that says that Oromila married Ojose and took her as a wife. And when he took her as a wife, she brought him prosperity, she brought him peace, and she brought him progress. Okay? Ojo Ose is the worship day. She was the daughter of Obatala. Okay? So, clearly, Orumila cannot marry a day, right? And a you know what I'm saying? It doesn't quite add up, right? Orumila doesn't marry a day. But when you understand within the theology that Obatala is the one who brought Ojo Ose to the world, Obatala is the one who brought the days of the week into existence. And then you understand what it means when we say that Ojo Ose was Obatala's daughter. The days of the week are Obatala's creation. That is what Obatala delineated for all of the divinities. He distinguished time because Obatala is the one who brought Igba Iwa to the world. What is Igba Iwa? People think of Igba Iwa as the calabash of character, but Igba Iwa is the calabash of existence. Iwa is not just character or virtue or behavior. Iwa is existence. Obatala brought existence to this plane. That's why he is the artist. He manifests the vision of Olodumare. He sculpts it into the third dimension. He makes it, right? He molds it in clay. This is all metaphorical talk. Metaphysical concepts. Obatala, who is white, his existence is white, which is blank, right? And upon that blankness, or out of that blankness, he manifests things into the third dimension as an artist who can envision things from nothing and make them manifest in the third dimension, including time. So if something exists, then it is subject to time and space. Obatala delineated time, and he punctuated that time in a 4-day cycle, which is Ojo Ose, the 4-day cycle. So every Orisha has a 4-day cycle. When Orumila started to observe the 4-day cycle, he organized himself in a consistent and methodical way, which is characteristic of Obatala, who we say leto, methodical, steady, orderly. When Orumila followed what Obatala had established, Orumila was successful. That's what it means that Orumila married Ojo Ose. Orumila, as a masculine principle, married the days of the week as a feminine principle. He combined them and he became prosperous. All right. But that you see all the different layers of consciousness within that particular system of thought, though. All of it is consistent, though. All of it is consistent with Yoruba theology. Everything that I told you, you can go and you can find the Odu Ifa, and it's all going to line up. And when you take that line of thinking and you match it up with weaving and and iron smelting and farming and festival creation and the palace law, the logic is going to be consistent. You're not going to run into a whole bunch of chaos and confusion where you're trying to use this understanding and this thought process in the palace, or when you understand what I'm saying? It's consistent. All of it comes out of a single mindset, which is Yoruba. Okay? Here is the problem that we're running into. When we start talking about masculine and feminine principles, most people who are within the practice of Orisha lifestyle don't have a background in Yoruba metaphysics. Most people have a background in other schools of thought when it comes to metaphysics. More precisely, 99.9% of the people who are talking about masculine and feminine energy are drawing from either a Hindu or probably more likely a European Western concept of metaphysics. That being alchemy, Rosicrucianism, Masonry, and to a lesser degree, Chinese medicine, Christianity, Islam, I think to a much lesser degree. I think most of the people, when I look at what people are talking about, when they talk about masculine and feminine energy, they're drawing mostly from Western concepts of masculine and feminine energy. And they don't always match. It's like taking the nose off of a person and trying to stick it onto a cat. It's not consistent with the whole system. So let's take, for example, in the Western system, alchemy, the sun is a masculine principle and the moon is a feminine principle. All right. So everything having to do with the sun is masculine, male, and everything having to do with the moon is feminine, female. Okay. But from a Hindu perspective, the sun is also a masculine principle. It is. But only the sun itself is a masculine principle. The light of the sun is a feminine principle. The warmth of a sun is a feminine principle. Okay? So if you're coming from a Western perspective, you're going to start drawing certain kinds of conclusions about that. Okay? What does it mean that the sun is a masculine principle, but the light of the sun is a feminine principle? Some people would take that in to say, oh, that means that we have both masculine and feminine within us, and we're a combination of male and female energy, and you know what I mean? But that's not what it means. The only way you can really grasp why the Hindus say the sun is masculine, but the light of the sun is feminine, is for you to understand what the goal of Hinduism is. The objective of Hinduism is to renounce this earthly experience so that you can achieve a purely, metaphysical, ethereal, you can achieve nirvana. All right. So that's why they practice strict renunciation. The goal is that when you get to a certain age in Hinduism, you depart further and further from the material world. And you renounce food, you renounce water, and you go into a meditative state, and then they even go off into the woods and you meditate to the point where you pretty much, disappear. You become a tree or something. That's how Hinduism works. That's the goal. And so the feminine principle that they're talking about, the light of the sun and the warmth of the sun and all that all belongs to what they call Maya. Maya is illusion. It's illusion. You see it and you feel it, but it's not real. That's not what you need to focus on. You renounce all of that. You depart from all that. You reject all of that. You don't believe in it. You don't invest in any of that. And you just go inward. And you're going to send all that light inward and illuminate your inner world. Right? That's the goal of Hinduism. So if you just try to take what they're saying about the sun being, the light of the sun being the feminine principle, if you just grab onto that and you try to now attach that to other spiritual systems, it's like taking the nose off of a human and trying to put it onto a cat. Because the objective of that philosophy and all the practices that go along with that don't match up with the objectives of other philosophies. Okay? So within Orisha lifestyle, it's really, 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 really important that you take the time to understand, like, what's the program running behind the vocabulary that people are using. Where are you drawing these ideas from? When you talk about masculine and feminine principles, where are you getting this philosophy from? Where in, that's why I always tell people you got to look at the sacred text. Because once you look at the sacred text, then you're going to be able to understand the motivation behind that text. Are they talking about history? Are they talking about plants? Are they talking about a metaphysical concept? What's the real context for that particular verse? Number one, and then overall, what's the point of Orisha lifestyle? What are we trying to do according to our sacred text? According to the sacred text, we're trying to help bring about the good condition. And the good condition essentially boils down to us balancing the heavenly and the earthly plane, which is metaphorical as well. It's a metaphor. What are we trying to do? What does that mean when you're going to balance heaven and earth, right? So in order to understand that, you got to go all into our theology. Where does heaven exist? Where does earth exist? What's the nature of heaven? What's the nature of earth? And why do we need to balance them out? What's going to happen when we balance them out? These are the things that are going to help you really grasp and understand Yoruba metaphysics. All right. So I hope this has been helpful to you. And I certainly invite you to engage in the conversation and let me know your thoughts and your experience on where have you learned Yoruba metaphysics? Who has taught you Yoruba metaphysics? And how important do you think it is to match your metaphysical system with your religious system? Okay? Because within, what is the purpose of a metaphysical system? A metaphysical system is intended to compensate for the religious system. Right? So everything that I talked to you about, within Orisha lifestyle, you could be talking about history, you could be talking about plants, you could be talking about palace culture, you could talk about customs and tradition and dress code. All of that is within the religion. But that part just gives you instructions on what to do. The metaphysical sense is what gives you the metaphors. It gives you this ability to abstract and apply, spiritual laws as the Yoruba understand them to your everyday life and create a big picture blueprint for what you're doing and where you're going and how to, kind of guide your spiritual journey, what we call ijolaye. Again, with the objective of balancing heaven and earth, right? So your metaphysical system would be the kind of your blueprint to heaven, and your religious system will be your blueprint to earth. This heavenly system compensates for the earthly. That's just giving you instructions. So I want to continue to go on, but it's there's enough being said for us to continue the conversation from this point. I hope this is meaningful for you. I hope you've got lots and lots of questions and insights, and I look forward to engaging this subject with you further. Aboro aboye, aboshishe.